Joe Matthew.
Many thanks, Charlie Pellet, live from World Headquarters in New York. President Trump soon will be wheels up here on his way to Pittsburgh. As you saw, Tyler Kendall already on the ground at the inaugural Pennsylvania Energy and Innovation Summit that's getting underway. The president will be there a couple hours from now. This is about AI and energy and $70 billion worth of investments up there, a pet project for Senator Dave McCormick, something that we'll be talking more about later in the hour as we track what's happening right here in the Capitol as well. Here inside the bubble, it's not just rescissions that they're talking about on Capitol Hill, though we do expect the first procedural votes on that matter today. We're going to talk about that coming up with Nathan Dean. It's also Crypto Week. We told you it was coming. It is finally here. Think Genius Act, clarity. And the gentleman from Wisconsin, Brian Stile, talking a short time ago on Bloomberg Crypto, the congressman from Wisconsin, of course, the Republican, who's a big fan from his perch on the Financial Services Committee, big fan of what's about to happen, and made the case for why these regulations need to be carved in stone. Listen.
This is our opportunity to have a clean start, to say, let's make sure that we're regulating this for the era of Web3, to force and to encourage the development of Web3 technology here in the United States. Lack of new legislation will continue the results of what we saw during the Chairman Gensler's time at the SEC, which was enforcement actions in an incredibly unproductive manner.
Happy Crypto Week, says Donald Trump, all caps exclamation point on Truth Social. The House, he says, will soon vote on a tremendous bill to make America the all caps again, undisputed #1 leader in digital assets. Nobody does it better, he says. The Genius Act, the president writes, is going to put our great nation light years ahead of China, Europe, and all others who are trying endlessly to catch up, but they just can't do it. He says digital assets are the future. We're leading by a lot. Get the first vote done this afternoon in all caps. All Republicans should vote yes, exclamation point. Our friend Nathan Dean is with us live at the desk here in Washington. Will they?
I think so. I mean, well, I'm not sure if all of them will, but most of them will. And a lot of Democrats will as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Genius Act was bipartisan. It got 68-30 in the Senate. So the hard part is already done. And enough policymakers on both sides of the aisle thought that there are enough regulatory gaps for stablecoins that something needs to be done. The Genius Act requires all stablecoin issuers to register with either the Fed or the Office of Comptroller of the Currency or with their state regulator, and they have to have their stablecoins backed by 100% high-quality liquid assets. The challenge, though, is with the Clarity Act. Now, President Trump could say, let's get this done, and I think the Clarity Act is going to pass the House. This is a more broader market structure crypto bill. This is the one that a lot companies like Robinhood and Coinbase are looking for.
That's the big one.
That's the big one. I'm not sure the Senate's ready for it. They have their own ideas. Yes. And I'm not even sure Senate Democrats are on board with it yet. I'm saying this needs time to cook. I think it can happen in the first half of next year. It's just the momentum is going to have to really come back.
But this is Crypto Week, Nathan. We don't have Crypto Year here, although maybe it will be based on what the president is saying. All part of making America great again, bigger, better than ever before. We're leading the world. He's talking in part about his own investments in crypto, isn't he? And this is a big reason why Democrats have an allergy to this.
Absolutely. I mean, Representative Maxine Waters, just in the House Financial Services Committee about an hour ago, that's what she led off in terms of this Dodd-Frank hearing. She led off with criticisms over these crypto bills because of President Trump's involvement. But I would also say is the crypto lobby has been fairly effective in reaching to both sides of the aisle. There are individuals like Senator Gillibrand from New York who are very much leading the wave on this. And I would also say is that, you know, when former SEC Chairman Gary Gensler was policing the crypto industry, it was almost regulation by piecemeal. And the courts were getting involved, and the courts were ruling against the SEC. Now, if nothing happens here and Congress doesn't act, well, the SEC only has authority over securities, and Bitcoin is a commodity. So there again, there's a regulatory gap, and the courts potentially could come in. So if I'm a member of Congress, I want to be the one writing the rules. I don't want a court to write the rules for me.
Interesting. So it does seem the market's a little bit ahead of us on this. $120,000 Bitcoin, they see something more than just the Genius Act passing here, right? When you see froth like this, if I can even call it that, I'm hearing about $1 million price targets again. Is that pegged to clarity passing? Because without it, what's changed?
Well, there's a lot of sentiment, and I think a lot of this is driving the sentiment here. And the ultimate goal here is just to move beyond retail investment into institutional investment. Okay. Now, when it comes to the Genius Act, we've seen a lot of banks over the last few months change their tune from saying, look, I'm against the Genius Act because where do we get stablecoin money from? Checking accounts. But instead, these banks are saying, hey, we should actually investigate our own stablecoins. Now, if the Clarity Act passes, that's the one where you're actually going to see institutional investors get a little bit more into the game, especially because the CFTC is given authority over the spot markets.
Okay.
So the CFTC would be able to regulate Bitcoin and get in there and make sure that a lot of the nefarious behavior that potentially could happen in the crypto industry, the risk profile lowers a little bit. So yes, there is a lot of sentiment right now. And, if the Clarity Act begins to fizzle out, potentially you could see retail investors get a little anxious about it. Yeah. But again, this crypto debate's not going away. The crypto lobby is ensured that it's going to be here all the way through the election.
Fascinating. When you hear about a $25 billion investment from Blackstone up in Pennsylvania, like we're seeing today, they're dumping billions along with CoreWeave and others in this big data center energy combo that we're seeing up there. What does that tell you about the future of investment in technology, whether it's crypto or AI? This does seem to be the animal spirits that a lot of people were talking about at the beginning of this administration.
Well, if you talk data centers, if you talk crypto, if you talk AI, there's so many different, tangents you can go down in terms of this investment. And that's what we're seeing from the industry is, look, we're going to go into Pennsylvania. We're going to do AI. Meta even just announced that they're going to do several significant data centers out in California. Huge. And, I think the challenge for Washington is, the easy part is trying to convince the industry to actually invest in things they already want to invest in. What's the policy solution? Because look, we have an energy policy that, the Republicans just, gutted a significant portion of the Inflation Reduction Act. That's energy that could potentially have gone to data centers. Where's it going to come from? So I do anticipate a significant energy debate to take place next year as we see more of these data centers and more of this power grids coming online, because I just don't think Washington has appropriately figured out yet where all this energy is going to come from.
Would that include, if Democrats are in the majority, the restoration of some of these incentives and tax credits for solar and wind?
I don't think so, just because obviously this passed via reconciliation under the Biden administration, and obviously with President Trump in power, the Democrats aren't going to have an ability.
You can't do that with 60 votes.
Exactly. You're not going to be able to do that. But I will say is that, we saw a lot of individuals like Senator Tom Tillis, obviously he's retiring, they tried to fight for these solar tax credits. So, something can happen. But again, I think the demand will have to come first, and then Washington's response will have to come later.
There's a reason why Tom Tillis is retiring. Deep tease, by the way. Tom Tillis is going to be with us coming up on the late edition of Balance of Power on the 5 o'clock hour. That is a conversation that you're going to want to hear because he's feeling very free to speak these days. Nathan Dean, rescissions. Feeling different than we talked about this last week when it looked like it might be going down in flames. There was worries about NPR stations in rural districts by some Republicans like Mike Rounds, others like Susan Collins worried about PEPFAR funding, USAID funding in some cases. Now we like the bill. Is the Senate amending it or the lawmakers changing their tune?
I think this is another case of President Trump using the bully pulpit to drag Republicans on board with his plans. And, the rescissions package, we don't have much of an investing angle. There's a little bit of there in the food space, for example, that, but I would just say is that if this bill passes, it's going to make a lot of Democrats very wary about agreeing to coming to an agreement in September with these appropriation bills. And, when you think of when does my spidey sense start to tingle? It's starting to tingle for a shutdown in September.
Now, because they said, wait, we already approved that money. We had a deal and you just clawed it back. Why should we trust anything?
Exactly. And when the appropriations process requires a 60-vote threshold, and rescissions doesn't, then what's the point of an appropriations if I'm asking that if I were a Democratic lawmaker? So I think what will happen is that you're going to see Democrats really try and keep their feet to the fire, keep the Republican feet to the fire when it comes to these appropriation bills. And I wouldn't be surprised if come October, we were in a shutdown for a couple of weeks.
Well, it's been a while since we talk about it a lot, but it's been a while since it's actually happened. And otherwise we're in CR heaven to eternity. How do you get a budget if there's only one party at work?
Well, I've been in Washington 15 years, and more of my time now has been on CRs than, and so CRs are what works. Obviously people like to complain about CRs, but it's the way to keep the government going. And so, but also I would just say is that if they can't come up with a solution, and obviously we're in early stages, they can always kick the can because there's nothing here that says this deadline is actually going to be that deadline.
All right, Nathan's here, so we got to pour some hot sauce on it. There is news on cannabis rescheduling. The House Appropriations Committee, speaking about this budget, out with the text of its Commerce, Justice, Science, related agencies legislation. Provisions inside to block the Justice Department from rescheduling marijuana. Will the Trump administration effort this to come to an end?
So I would just say is that language was also in a prior iteration from last year. So, just if...
Don't read too far into this.
Exactly. So if you're a marijuana investor, just remember this has happened before. And there was some hot sauce. I mean, these marijuana equities were moving because there's just rumors going around that reschedulization is going to happen imminently. But I go back to the idea that I have not seen anything publicly from the administration that suggests reschedulization is going to happen. They were in court just last week, and they told the judge that, that there has been no action on reschedulization. And you also don't have a DEA administrator yet. And the nominee, has not been very pro-crypto. I'm sorry, pro-marijuana.
Yeah,
so
right.
I'm not sure. I'm not seeing it right now.
Wasn't Trump legalize it on the campaign trail?
Yeah, I absolutely. And this is where I think a lot of the marijuana investors are extremely disappointed because they had one story going into the election and you're getting a second story coming out. But I would say is that I do think legalization of marijuana is coming. And we have this debate all the time internally at BI. I just don't think it's going to happen for another 4 or 5 years. I think the states are going to fill the void.
Fascinating as ever. We always learn from Nathan Dean, which is why he is the senior U.S. policy analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence, the smartest people in the building. Nathan, great to have you. We'll do this again soon. Maybe rescissions will have passed. You never know around here. That's why you have to check in every day on Balance of Power. I'm Joe.